Hey everybody, Danielle Egnew here. Welcome to InPsightRadio, where you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. Woo! Can you even believe how fast this summer is going by? I mean, granted, we've been in this moving process and it was huge and we relocated the studio and there was a whole bunch to that. And blah, 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 on it goes. Yet I am really on the floor about the time compression that we've been in. I mean, literally the weirdest wormholes ever that you could possibly even think are there. I have literally had the strangest time with wormholes this whole summer. And I got to stepping back and thinking about it. And really, in part, this is due to the fact that we are in this feminine time frame. I know I talk about it all the time. Yet we are in a time acceleration because we do need to learn lessons quicker because we've got, again, as I talk about, we've got some things coming up in the future that we need to band together on as a human race. And that's going to get a little rough if we're not banding together. Yet this time acceleration, whoa! I mean, I literally have been falling into wormholes of lost time. Now, this to me is crazy because I have a terrible sense of time anyway. I'm so in between time frames, talking to angels, talking to off-worlders, talking to elementals, that it's really easy for me to lose time. My internal clock sucks. I mean, it's really terrible. I go to judge maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and because I am so interwoven with what's going on in all of these timelines, I lose time like crazy. It's harsh. But even with regard to recording some of these podcasts for you, I was recording a podcast a while back and just getting the studio set up in our new studio in our new location. And we've been having all kinds of problems getting internet out here because I live in the middle of the country, which is absolutely awesome for everything else except for apparently internet. So we kind of got some wrong information about how easy it was going to be to run it out here. And it isn't. So I'm so glad you all are so patient while we're actually trying to get a way to get the podcast out of the studio and to you. And in the middle of all this, these crazy time compressions have been happening. Now, I thought in part it might have been because we've moved in Gallatin Valley. We've moved 60 miles from Yellowstone Park. So we literally live 60 miles from West Yellowstone, 20 miles from Big Sky. We're in Gallatin Gateway, which is a little town 6 miles outside of Bozeman. And why do I keep bringing this up? Well, it's because we're on the edge of Yellowstone Park. So we're on the edge of the world's largest volcano caldera, which is fascinating if you're wired like me to actually receive messages and send them out to people. So I am literally living on the edge of this huge volcano caldera, which is an expulsion zone. And that's where you have all of the earth energies coming up out of the earth. So you would not believe the overload of messages that I have been absolutely overrun with. And it's been rough. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's been rough trying to figure out how do I parcel these? What do I talk about? Mostly the earth out here is just going on and on and on about how it needs our help. And it really would love us to stop poisoning it. And we need to come back into a resonation with the earth so that we can progress in an evolutionary state and not just be another dodo bird that goes alongside the evolutionary see you later alligator path because we couldn't get into synchronicity with our surroundings. So one of my issues with time compression has been losing chunks of time. And I thought in part it might be due to the fact that now I'm living on the edge of this giant electromagnetic center. I mean, Yellowstone Park contains 40% of the Earth's geothermal activity. 40% of the Earth's geothermal activity is 60 miles from my house, which I love. Can I tell you, the vibes over here are tremendous. Yet it does create an electromagnetic wrinkle in the time fabric. And I had a terrific guest on last week. I had on Shane Kirkham of Kirkham & Company, and he's an interior designer who's also a humongous empath, and he's a Dolomon fanatic, and he reads up on the pyramids, and we have the best time talking about world phenomenon. And during the podcast, when Shane and I were putting the podcast together, the first part of the podcast just disappeared. And then the computer stopped working. I mean, and gang, you got to understand. I mean, I know my studio setup, and my assistant knows the studio setup. And I've been recording on this same setup for 10 years and just changing the gear out. So it's not like, oh, gee, I had a computer malfunction. I mean, honestly, it's like going to the bathroom at this point. I mean, you just go and you do it and you know how to do it and you don't think about it. So in the middle of the podcast, all of a sudden, the first part of our visit, or the first piece of it, just disappeared and was substituted with another file in my computer that I don't even know how the program even found the file. Well, it was a weird thing. And then the equipment wasn't working, and that was weird. So I was watching the clock, and I took about 40 minutes to try to figure out, I was in there with my assistant, and we tried to figure out what was going on, and really couldn't figure anything out, gang, because nothing was wrong. I mean, all the signal chains were correct. Everything was right. And so we went back in and just did a little pickup segment to this part that had gotten deleted. Well, I go downstairs, and we've been upstairs for maybe an hour and 40 minutes, up in the studio. And I go downstairs, and I see my wife, and we start talking. And she said, "What were you guys doing up there?" I said, "Oh, nothing. We just had a little technical problem, but we got through it. It was not a big deal." She said, "You were up there for 3.5 hours. And I said, "No, we weren't. We did the podcast, and, I had about 30, 40 minutes of figuring out a problem that eventually weirdly righted itself out of nowhere." And she said, "You've been up there for 3.5 hours. And my guest, Shane, he looked at me and I looked at him. I'm like, "Did that seem like 3.5 hours?" He's like, No. But I looked at the clock, and the clock downstairs was not the same as my studio clock. And indeed, the clock downstairs showed that we had been up into the studio space for 3.5 hours. Now, my clock showed that we had been up here an hour and a half. And between that and the bizarre computer problems and the bizarre, I can't even tell you, I won't get into it, it's boring, but so many problems that happened. And then to add to that, we lost somehow 2 hours up here in the studio. Now, there would have been a time that I'd be saying, "Oh my God, I think we got abducted by aliens." And maybe we did, I don't know. But I don't think that was it. I think that the proximity of where we live to Yellowstone Park, I think living right on this giant electromagnetic caldera, the ley lines here, the energy lines, this whole space out here is so fluid. I mean, it is unflipping believable. And the days fly by and the messages come out of the ground. And I feel like I'm living in another dimension. It's a beautiful dimension. It's gorgeous. And the angels are chatting constantly and nature is chatting constantly. Yet I can absolutely tell that it's going to take a little bit of time for me to get used to this massive energy influx up here. And we do have time folds here. Now, what's a time fold? A time fold is when the electromagnetic pulse of the earth creates a burp, for lack of a better way to put it. And you take that burp of extreme electromagnetism that's coming up through the ground, and then you multiply it with the rotation of the earth, and you get time augmentation. It's like time travel. So you may have experienced this actually. And it's so funny because when you try to talk to people about wormholes, time burps, time pockets that just a piece of a space in a room will move slower than another space, people think you're full of garbage. They think you're full of crap. Well, I'm here to tell you, you're not full of crap because this is a real phenomenon. Now, also factor in that our poles on our planet have been attempting to swing and move for several years. So they're kind of wobbling and they're just moving around and nothing's really happened, but they're trying to kind of build up an inertia, or actually a momentum, so that the inertia will fling the poles around. And when we have that augmentation in our crust, then if you do live by a geothermal area, especially those of you who live on fault lines, anybody in Southern California, anybody in the St. Louis area who's on that dormant fault line that, God bless it, is about ready to go at any time, or we're going to have another little shaker in St. Louis probably in the next 18 months. Yet, this whole area, all of our fault lines are expulsion zones. And that means that the compressed electromagnetic and geothermal energy in the earth is getting squished up inside of those areas. So if you look at living, say, where I live out here in the Gallatin Valley, in Gallatin Gateway, 60 miles from Yellowstone Park, right on the edge of those humongous mountains, and the mountains actually at one time were the edge of the volcano caldera, this huge volcano. I mean, I couldn't believe it. 3.5 hours. We lost 2 hours. We lost 2 hours. Honestly. So this pointed me in another direction, and I started looking at the behaviors that I'm seeing in people. And you can see it online. You can see it in different countries. The behaviors I'm seeing in people. People are either getting into a very peaceful resonation and a peaceful vibe, or people are going absolutely crazy. I mean, just losing it. Going bug crap cuckoo. I have a very dear friend who had a family member who just completely lost it on her to the point of disowning her, dumping her off of Facebook. I mean, it was just like that individual had drank some sort of toxin that caused them to have a hallucinogenic effect. Now, why would I bring this up with time augmentation? Because when we have excessive electromagnetic frequency, EMF, that floods the atmosphere, it can actually cause paranoia and hallucinations. It can cause skin irritations. I mean, think back. We're going back in time. Go back in time with me. We're going back in time to 2006, watching Most Haunted. Did you ever watch Most Haunted? It was a great show. It was on in England, and it had Yvette Fielding as the host, and Derek Acora was a medium that was on that show. And the Brits love their psychics and their paranormal investigation. And, think back to the time when they would go ghost hunting. And I mean, they would explain, if they were in a home that had poorly grounded wiring, they would explain all about the EMF leaks and what they do to people's brains. I mean, even look at, Jason Hawes of Ghost Hunters, good old Sci-Fi Channel show Ghost Hunters. Jason and Grant back in the day when they used to tell stories about, well, you could be having an EMF hallucination and it could be caused from ungrounded wiring in your house. So EMF, gang, if it is not grounded or we have a whole bunch of it, it can cause people to act really crazy. So we're just going to put a pin in that for a second and talk about this time compression, how much electromagnetic energy it takes for time to literally create a rip or a warble. And in that time compression that I experienced in my studio with my guest, I was not the only one there, and sometime I'll get Shane back in the studio and he can talk about it. During that time, the entire computer system failed and acted totally bizarre. So obviously, computers are very affected by electromagnetic frequency. EMF disturbance is a big deal. If we ever have a terrorist attack and they blow off an EMF bomb, we're going to be sitting in some serious trouble here in the United States because everything is based upon electronics. And those EMF bombs disable electronics. So in this time fold that I experienced on the edge of Yellowstone Park that ate 2 hours of time up out of my life, it's bizarre. It's like I literally, my body is even saying right now, and this was like a week ago, but right now my body's saying, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong day. It's like I can't catch up. So whatever time bubble that we were in seems to have a biological effect of several days, which is bizarre. So if you think about going back to how people's minds are affected by all of this, the Earth is going through extreme geothermal changes. And those of you who have followed the messages that I've been putting out, remember back in 2016, I was talking about how once we hit 2018 to 2020, we were going to be seeing some really incredible disturbances in our, in our plate tectonics, in our geothermal realm. And obviously we had Kilauea, poor Hawaii was blowing up. Keep your eyes on Indonesia, those, and poor Japan. They've got some pressure that I see coming up in the future. Those are going to be blowing on them. And I wish I got the exact dates on stuff like that. God, I would call their emergency control people and say, hey, guess what? On this and this date, you're going to have a huge volcano erupt. Unfortunately, I don't get the dates. Okay. However, I do know that ring of fire, that side of the ring of fire is going to go. And it's going to go here probably in the next couple of months. I can feel that because I can feel the pressure building up, the geothermal pressure building up in Yellowstone Park. Now, Yellowstone isn't going to blow on me. I don't feel that, but I can feel the geothermal energy through that park. So I guess on the upside, the downside is apparently we have huge time folds when you're this close to that much of a geothermal center. The other side of that is that we've got a lot of information coming up through the earth. So that's going to help me with all of you pass some really incredible messages on. And that I'm excited about. Yet what I'm also noting is that this geothermal pressure is creating quite a bit of ruckus. And I believe that ruckus, it's creating it in people's minds as well. I'm always talking about the brain being an electromagnetic organ. I mean, it's part of my ongoing desire to educate everybody that the body and the spirit are not separate. Okay. We don't have a separation of body and spirit. So the brain being electromagnetic and the ground burping all of this huge electromagnetic expulsion and our poles trying to do their shifty change thing, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on right now. So if you're noticing that people are acting really weird and you're not exactly sure why, take it from the girl who lives on the edge of the volcano caldera at this point. There's a lot of earth changes that are happening. So I'm going to transition this topic a little bit into some of the crazy that we're seeing in the world. And John McCain has just passed. And this makes me so sad that he has passed because with that, we've had a great person who understood decency and diplomacy and balance in governance. And so John McCain, though of course I didn't always agree with all his policy. However, I loved the guy. I just loved what he stood for. And I loved in the debate that he had with President Obama when they were both running. When the woman stepped up and said, well, Obama's a Muslim and he's not even from the United States. And here, McCain took the mic away and he said, no, ma'am, that's not correct. And, he set the record straight and said that, of course, he and Barack Obama had differing opinions, yet they, obviously Obama was a member of the United States. I mean, he's a citizen. So with a person like John McCain passing, okay, we have a hole in structure of government that requires filling. And he did hold a space for a consciousness that loved the idea of governance by the people. And like I said, of course, obviously, I didn't always agree with his principles or his policies. However, I loved the fact that he felt like everybody had the shot at getting in and governing a country by the people for the people, okay? And I'm watching all of these different reactions to Senator McCain passing. And I'm watching people, some of these people are just losing their minds over it. And I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute. We've got this, obviously, he was suffering from brain cancer for a long time. It was his time to cross over. And by the way, I'm going to be talking to him in the ethers. I am absolutely going to see if I can't get a hold of John McCain in the ethers and have some incredible conversations with him about what the heck's heck's actually going on in the government? Because I bet he has a lot of information, and I bet he'd tell me everything, because that's the kind of guy he was. So when I look at the rage that some people had towards Senator McCain, and then I look at the rage other people had towards others who really, supported Senator McCain, and I look at the irrational bursts that people are going through, and then I look at all of this time fold that's happening, and I look at all these expulsion zones that are carrying electromagnetic energy through it. Gang, we have a powder keg in the earth right now. And someone like Senator McCain stepping out of government leaves a vacuum or a hole in an area where there would have been temperance. Okay. And love him or hate him, the guy was all about temperance. You needed to have temperance in proceeding as a person who governed for the people. So now we've got this hole, and it remains to be seen what happens with that hole. Yet as I look ahead and I'm seeing the earth expelling all of this geothermal and electromagnetic energy as our poles are trying to shift and swiggy around there, I'm watching people's brains be affected by this. It hits me like a ton of bricks that it is so deeply important for all of us during this time frame to find a way to center ourselves. Otherwise, we're gonna be like one of the creatures on Walking Dead. We're gonna drop with a zombie virus of consciousness. And I've told this story before, yet I did have this weird dream around 2011 or 12 when I was living back in Los Angeles about how people just started losing their minds and become violent and attacking each other. And I was oddly at the Alamo in Texas. And during this dream, the people at the Alamo started disappearing, and I was left talking to this one young man. And I couldn't tell if he was infected by the virus or not. I had to really watch him to see if he was infected by this virus. And what I found as I talked to him was that he was, and at any moment he could go crazy, and he was helping build some structure in the middle of the Alamo. And it was like he was going to beat my head in with a hammer. So I gently took the hammer away from him, and I kind of threw it over this big tall fence, and I excused myself. And the whole point of the dream was people were just breathing in through the air something that was turning off their frontal cortex, and they were just going nuts. And now I'm looking at all this EMF coming up. I'm experiencing this time fold, this loss of 2 hours. I watched my computer take a dump on it, and Shane and I both felt a little weird afterwards. And I'm looking at the reactions that people are having that go well and truly energetically beyond your standard internet troll. I mean, it's kind of like that wall of rage that came up after the election, because we literally had stepped into the ether of fear and anger and rage, and we've been pushing it back ever since. We literally entered another dimension of consciousness in 2016 to 17. And in 18, we're shoving it right back over. But it's taken a couple of years for people to understand what the heck happened. And people got physically ill. I mean, it was a big deal. So when we talk about dimensional shifts, electromagnetic shifts, when we talk about the augmentation that is possible with the human brain, we're talking about opportunities for, if you want to call it a consciousness psychosis, whatever you want to call it, but it's a real thing, gang. I'm not being a paranoid weirdo talking about just bizarre conspiracies. I mean, this is science we're talking about with the human brain. So again, when I watched the reaction to Senator McCain's passing, and I felt, and I still feel in Washington, D.C., this hole in consciousness, I don't feel that it's going to fill up with dark, weird, crazy, icky stuff. It's going to fill in with a lot of light. Yet in the meantime, we have a grand division of consciousness going on. And I really think that our earth and who we've become on the earth are symbiotic. So we're going through all of these changes. The earth is going through changes. We're going through consciousness shifts. We're trying to really transcend and evolve from a 3D world to a 5D world. Okay, and what is 3D versus 5D? Well, 3D is all about the exterior realm defines me. 5D is about I am the interior is the exterior. I am one with Mother, Father, God, and we walk in union. And you can be a 3D being with a 5D outlook, okay? So there's a ton going on. I talk all the time about the shift into the time frame of the feminine, and I talk about that because we really do need to be aware that there are some dynamics that are different there. So I'm feeling the earth begin to shift, and I'm watching the consciousness change, and I'm watching people directly in the chain of that EMF burst change also. So if you're finding yourself getting really irritated or tired, that is an EMF expulsion. One of the highest expulsion zones on the west coast of the United States is actually up around Washington and Portland, Oregon, all the way up through Washington State. You've got those big volcanoes up there, and that expulsion zone can be so heavy with electromagnetic energy that it can feel sleepy. I mean, I used to live in Seattle. I love Seattle. I love the Pacific Northwest. It took me 2 years to wake up in Seattle. I kid you not. And I never fully could. And I thought there was something wrong with me because of the low pressure, blah, blah, blah. Fact of the matter was, nobody told me that that's one of the hottest expulsion points outside of the Ring of Fire. It's actually the farthest, I guess, east point of the Ring of Fire. And it's got a lot of energy coming up there. And I literally could not get my brain out of the fog. So when we think about areas of the earth right now that are getting squeezed and more energy is coming up from those areas in the earth, like here at Yellowstone Park or any fault lines that y'all may be living on, take a look at how people are behaving. Are people more in a fog? Are they getting irritated? Are they getting angry? Are they exhibiting signs of EMF saturation? And let's try to have a little grace with one another through this, because none of us can do anything about the fact that our brains are electromagnetic and that we are going to be subject to a lot of change as the earth shifts and changes. Okay? So try to be as calm as you can with people. When you feel like having your own inner meltdown, do your best to just walk in union with peace right now. Because I can tell you, gang, the earth is changing so much. So, kind of segueing from that into just what's been going on in the news. Wow. What's up with the weird news? I actually disabled my Apple feed because I could not take the news anymore. And if I have to hear one more time, CNN's breaking news, this senator sold his, toenail to a porn star for this amount of money. I'm over it. I'm over the crazy. The earth is really going through a lot of changes, and it's affecting us. And the point that I would make here is that humans are not necessary for the function of the earth. We just live on the surface of the earth. And most of the earth is covered by water. And so the places that we live, we're not even a predominant species, even though there's 8 billion of us. We're a predominant species. Okay, I'll take that back. But we're not a predominant driving force of nature. Now we're changing some aspects of nature with putting too much carbon emissions into our atmosphere. Yeah, let me put this into scope for you. Here in Bozeman, there's one of the top dinosaur museums in the United States, and it's called Museum of the Rockies. And here in Montana, we have tons of dinosaur finds. I mean, whatever this place was, it must have been the biggest giant grassy marsh ever. Yet there are just tons of fossilized dinosaur bones that surface here in Montana. So my dad came to visit, and my wife and I and my father took our daughter to the dinosaur museum, as she calls it. She loves it. Museum of the Rockies is cool. And while we were there, of course, I'm observing that these giant, huge beings, these dinosaurs, they lived for millions of years at a stretch. So one of these prehistoric eras lasted for millions and millions and millions of years. And then you had another one, you had the Cretaceous and the Jurassic and all these different, the Mesozoic and all these amazing, huge, giant, millions of year-long time frames, okay? Now, why is that so striking? Because humans, we've been around. This is the third version of humans. We've been killed off twice before. And we've only really been around in our current state, the last maybe 100,000 years, 80,000 years. I mean, we are a blip on the timeline. We're a blip. I don't know if you can lock this in your mind that the Earth was the same for almost a billion years. It was the same for millions and millions and millions and millions of years, with giant creatures roaming around on it. And then all of a sudden, these creatures go extinct, and we're not sure why. Maybe there was an asteroid, or maybe the Earth had a giant geothermal event, but we're not sure. But this entire culture of beings just disappeared. And then the Earth started to radically change after that. And then there was just nothing. There was like no life on the Earth for, I think it was 15 million years? There was nothing. The Earth, the oceans were dead. The dinosaurs were dead. There is a dead period on the Earth for 15 million years. Now, I don't know about you, but that kind of freaks me out to think about the Earth being just lifeless for 15 million years until it started getting its groove back. Now, I wish I would have been paying enough attention to tell you which eras that the Earth was lifeless. However, it really got me to thinking that what if there was another culture that extincted the dinosaurs on purpose because they needed to terraform the Earth for another reason, and they needed evolution to go a different direction, because as it stood, those dinosaurs were just going to keep going. I mean, it was a perfect system with huge tropical forests. Yet an asteroid hits the Earth and knocks the Earth's life out for 15 million years, and then it adjusts and comes back, and we have smaller, more nimble beings that, I mean, it's kind of weird, don't you think? So I think about us as human beings on this planet, and we've been here for such a short amount of time, and we think we are so the top of the food chain. And I think about what would happen if the Earth got hit by an asteroid and took life out for another 15 million years. Who's going to evolve back? I mean, we'd have to start back from the muck in the ocean and start all over again. So I can understand why the Earth has been so desperate. And really, the energy out of the Earth has been somewhat desperate, not for itself. The Earth is going to keep going. The Earth is going to survive no matter what. The energy of the Earth that's been coming up has been just imploring humanity to come back to it. Please come back to me. Please listen to me. I can help you. Yet that's not what we've been doing. I mean, we've been too busy fighting over really bizarre stuff. And until we can come together as #TribeEarth, as the Earth tribe, and not look at each other like we are, aliens just because we live in a different country or have a different belief system, we're going to extinct ourselves. And I have people in my field all the time. They get so mad at me. They're like, "Oh, that's fear consciousness." I'm like, no, it's not. I'm getting this from the Mother, Father, God within. I'm getting this from the Mother, Father, God within the Earth, from within ourselves. Each one of us has that Mother, Father, God universal consciousness in it. And we all are hearing this message that's saying, please, 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 come into a place of union. Come into a place of understanding that you never left that Garden of Eden. You're still there. You've just had a bad acid trip of consumerism and Cheetos, and you need to pull your head out and decide, whoa, we can do this as a conglomerate. As a species, we can do this because it's coming up on that time. And I'm not talking end of days. I'm just saying this is natural cause and effect. And our poor planet is burping EMF everywhere that's causing actual time folds. So when we look at this and we look at how do we bring the kind of centeredness to the self that if I encounter some weird time fold, I'm not going to lose my mind and, pick up a hammer and beat a hole through the wall. I mean, how do we center ourselves when we're surrounded with so many messages that are so negative? Well, obviously nature is one of the ways, yet consciousness, our mind, this is a message that was brought to me over out of the caldera of the park by the energy of the earth. This message was that we literally hold the gateway to paradise in our minds. Now, I'm going to try to explain this the best that I can here. Yet, in all of these changes with the geothermal energy and the electromagnetic folds of the earth, it's affecting our brains, okay? And some people are going bat crap crazy about it. Other people are having massive amounts of spiritual gifts and talents open up. Other people are having these phenomenal gifts that they never even knew existed burst onto the scene, and they are going great guns. So what's the difference? Well, according to the powers that be, according to the caldera over the hill, according to the earth, according to the Mother, Father, God within, according to the angelic realm, the difference is how we choose to route the energy. And I asked these angels, I said, well, what do you mean route the energy through my brain? I mean, like what? Like I'm a cattle chute and I'm trying to get certain cows to go one way or the other? I mean, I don't understand. What does that even mean? And what they're talking about is routing through perception. Perception. I mean, I can look at a color yellow. You can look at a color yellow. You might think it's more orange. I may think it's more red. Someone standing next to us might think it's actually cornflower yellow. However, our perception is the gateway to paradise. So if we have two routes that humanity can go, and we really do, we have two routes that humanity can go, we can keep allowing ourselves to have our brains messed with by all this EMF, if you want to call it EMF poisoning or EMF saturation. And also we've got cell towers and all that other stuff out there. Or we can figure out a way to allow this electromagnetic organ to open up so that we can see the world for what it truly is. Because what was brought to me was that we are still in paradise. We are still in a place that is perfect. We still have this miracle potential that's at our fingertips. We're just not using it because we're too caught up on our iPhone reading the news, thinking the news is going to dictate our future. Well, the news is reporting in the past, gang. The news isn't the future. The news is looking in the rearview mirror. The news reports on stuff that has happened in the past, has happened. Think about that a minute. So when we look at the news thinking it's a projection of the future, we're actually looking in the rearview mirror saying the past is going to be the future. That's not necessary. Okay? So in this time period of being a 5D being in a 3D body, in this time period of the earth begging us in essence, well, it's doing its thing, but it's really wanting us to come into union with it so that we all don't end up like a crispy on the side of the road, and that we can all survive together. Part of what the earth needs is not just for us to lessen our fossil fuels, but part of what the earth needs here, and this is a big part of it, the earth needs us to get on board with understanding that we are in paradise. The earth needs our resonant consciousness. The earth needs us to transcend or transfer this electromagnetic energy that it's casting off because it's getting ready to make some changes. It needs our help in processing this extra EMF. And we can grab it with the brain and go crazy with it and turn into paranoid wackos, or we can let it open the mind up. Because nature never wastes anything. So at the same time that people are going crazy with these EMF bursts, people are also experiencing humongous bursts in their ability to see the future, to understand the purpose of life, to understand their spouses. I mean, think about this. There's been a lot that's going on that has to do with the transformation of our world. So, time folds are a symptom of large bursts of EMF. Big, giant changes in hysteria levels are symptoms of big changes in EMF. And probably everybody's on Facebook too much, but that's another podcast. So if we know that the earth is going to be putting out these massive bursts, how do we use it? How do we use it? Well, the other side of the coin is if we ground ourselves, then the body, the brain, starts to hear that 7.83 Schumann resonance, which is the base pulse of the earth. And, there have been all these, you guys, there's been all of this hullabaloo going around that the Schumann resonance is changing, it's shifting, it's raising. Actually, it doesn't. It goes through a harmonic cycle, but the Schumann resonance stays the same. It's the heartbeat of the planet. So if we can allow ourselves to ground out and sit in the grass or sit with your back against a tree, if you are listening to this podcast and you live in New York City and it is really hard for you to get to any grass, you can get out there to Central Park, but sit with your back against a tree because the tree's roots go way into the earth. The tree grounds itself through the electromagnetic frequencies. And wood is a horrible conductor of electricity. It's terrible. So that's great if you want to lean against the tree and let the tree just be a buffer because the tree's not going to be full of EMF. Let the tree be a buffer and let it pull all of that energy downward. Let it pull it downward. So ground, find a place to ground. Let's use these EMF expulsions to open our gifts and abilities, to open our chakra points, to open our minds. If you find yourself getting real crispy with somebody, go out and sit against a tree and just sit outside for 15 minutes and take a break. Take a rest. There's a lot coming at us, humanity. There's a lot. And with that, I'm going to transition over to what's been going on in government because we're going to be seeing some really interesting turns of events. Mueller has been pulling all of his information in. And I have so much email saying, when's Mueller going to let people know what's happening and blah, blah, blah. Well, I can tell you, just from my own personal snooping into what he's doing, that Mueller is hanging back and waiting until a lot of these primaries and midterms and election cycles make their turnaround. Because he does not want to be in a position that Comey was in when Comey released the really bizarre announcement that they were still looking into Hillary's emails, even though they really weren't. That was a weird thing. And so Mueller learned from that. And he's not going to be releasing any information that's huge anyway before some major elections. Because once he does, there are going to be so many people who are going to be coming down with this. And it is people in the FBI. It is people in political parties. It's some people you wouldn't even expect, in political parties. So there's a lot that's going to come out about this Russian issue. And what's going to come out is that really there's a lot of American companies in our country that have been wanting this collapse of resources in government for quite a long time. Because it's these companies that benefit when we deregulate things. Of course, the earth is over here going, really? With the whole coal thing, are we still doing that? Okay, whatever, knock yourself out. I was dead for 15 million years, and life on earth was dead. The planet wasn't dead, but life on earth was dead. I bet you the earth, God, can you imagine if you were the earth? If I were the earth, I'd be like, wow, it's so quiet in here. I love it. Oh, has it only been 15 million years? Oh, okay, well, I probably should allow something to grow. Let's go. Let's get it together. Come on, life. Let's evolve. So in our evolution of government, Mueller's going to come out with his stuff. And we're not only going to be faced with a situation where the House of Representatives looks like it's going to have, if not an even split Democratic population, a Democratic majority. So the House of Representatives starts the impeachment process, yet Mr. Trump is not really the key issue here. He's one guy. There is a whole machine that was put in place operating around him that he's kind of the front guy for that is big money. And so if there's a President Pence, that's going to get kind of sticky because, boy, President Pence, I can't even, wow. And it's not because he's a Republican. It's because the guy is so full of fear. That man is full of fear. I mean, I just want to walk up to him and hand him a pink teddy bear and say, it's okay. You can come out of the closet. It's 2018, President Pence, if he actually made it there. So Mueller knows that the whole campaign, the whole Trump campaign, it wasn't just Trump. I mean, that takes out your VP. It takes out everybody. It's a big process to actually indict all the people you want to indict. And I know there are people out there who believe that our president didn't do anything wrong and that the big money is just trying to get the president out because they want the good old boys club in there. And actually, they've got a great pal in there now because they got another big money guy in there. So he just, Trump's just doing what Trump does. He is who he is. He's always been who he is. He hasn't changed. The issue that we're getting a chance to see is that we have sold our country. So Mueller is going to come forward with a lot of this information, and it's going to pull up people in all forms of government. Now, why am I tagging this little piece at the end of a podcast about how the electromagnetic frequencies are raising in the earth and affect our brains? Well, when all this stuff comes out, we are going to have a train wreck of consciousness. And I'm looking around November-ish, right after all those changeovers happen in the House. And there are certain pieces and parts of his investigation that will come out before that. And, we've got all the people testifying and throwing Trump under the bus and blah, blah, blah. But again, gang, Donald Trump isn't the issue. He is the very, very teeny little piece of the iceberg above the ocean. And there's a 9-mile iceberg underneath there that's been taking out naval fleets for years. And it's really the 9-mile iceberg that we should be looking at. And it's the 9-mile iceberg that Mueller is going for. That's why he's not just pulling Trump out of office. That's why none of this is happening, because he is going for the 9-mile iceberg. And it's not just, Trump was easily manipulated by Putin, okay? So that was an easy one. Yet these are American companies that have been wanting the government to go in this direction for a long time. And so do your best not to get distracted with just gross news like white supremacist stuff and whatnot. Obviously, that's in my opinion, that's pretty appalling. Whenever we victimize another person, that's rough. Yet do your best to keep focused, because from now until the end of the year, we are going to see more revolutionary changes in our country than we've seen in the last 5 years. 5 years. And this, of course, has to do with, we're going to have an historic amount of women going to Congress. We're going to have an historic amount of minority women and Native American women going to Congress. That is absolutely going to change the balance of temperance. So with Senator McCain leaving, as I was saying at the top of the podcast, this temperance is going to be balanced with a lot of light coming in. And I'll tell you, a lot of these women that are going to be winning, a lot of them are coming under the Republican banner. Yet they are not towing the big money line. They're just towing some God and country and let's try to do things on a budget. Yet why are we throwing people out and separating families? That's insane. And so again, the temperance aspect that's coming in is going to be beautiful. And this kind of leads up to the big jazz hands ending of this podcast, which has to do with really watching your intention in this next couple of months. Why do you do things? Why? I've been getting this repeat message from the angelic realm as I'm reading for people individually. And yes, by the way, yes, I still do individual readings. Yes, I have my tour coming up and we had to rebuild the studio and relocate it and try to find internet, and a lot's been going on in my universe, yet I still do personal readings. And a lot of those readings that are coming through have this incredible analogy that these angels are passing on to me. And this analogy is that we are the stone in a stream. And if you've watched a mountain stream, if you've just sat on the side of a mountain stream and listened to the water, and watch the power come down. That stone just sits there. And the water brings it leaves, and the water brings it sticks, and the water brings it fish, and the water brings it nutrients. Yet the stone is sacred in its stillness. And everything it needs is brought to it. And this message that I'm hearing over and over again from the sky, from the angels, from the earth, man, my eyes have been opened to an even further degree about how unified the entire quantum field is, how unified we are, how the sky and the earth are one, how we are one with all of it. So this time frame that's coming forward is begging us to be still while all of this change is brought to us, and what we need will be brought to us. And this goes on and on and on, this message. Yet when we're looking at temperance, it's important. If that rock were to get panicky and decide that it needed somebody to, upend it or whatever, it's only going to flop over one stone and it's still going to be right where it started. This is a time frame of learning to be present and to hold the perimeter and hold the space for what you've been here to do. So Senator McCain, he had his beliefs and he had all kinds of things. And again, I didn't always agree with them. Yet I always agreed that we have a right as the people to be the governing body. And I always agreed with his temperance. I always did. And we see such tribalism right now in government. And the tribalism is the rushing river. Okay, it's the push. It has to be this way or that way, or, and this started, and we forget that this started, but this started when Obama became president and the Tea Party came in, and we had whole teams of people just shutting down the government and voting completely party line. So pretty soon the response to that was the Democrats are all shutting down and becoming party line. And now we've got this polarized system that just doesn't work. And that's what John McCain was trying to get everybody to do, was to come to the middle so we could actually bring all these incredible perspectives and make a greater whole out of it. So in this time frame, remember that you are the stone. And remember that obsessive tribalism is the push. And what does the push do? Well, it just goes down the road and it's gone. But the stone is constant. And you are here. We are all here to bring in a message. We are all leaders in this time frame. So be present like that stone in the water, especially now through the end of December, because we are going to be seeing devastating hurricanes, crazy natural disasters. We are going to be seeing geothermal activity that's going to make Hawaii look like second fiddle news to big explosions of big portions of islands going away. We've got big earth changes that are natural to our earth. The variant component on the earth at this time is humanity. We are the variable. 8 billion of us transmit electromagnetic intention through the mind. And if we harness that chaos energy and we blow it up to the sky, we are going to accelerate the chaos. If we harness the love energy and we blow it up to the sky, we will literally calm the earth. We will calm the electromagnetic and geothermal disturbances in the earth. This is the connected power of our species. This is the truth that has been withheld from us for thousands of years. That when we come together, what we are able to do is miracle, massive potential in complete global transformation, all the way down to weather, all the way down to consciousness. So as we wear on, and the news is going to get weird, it's going to get weirder. Just when you thought it couldn't, the news gets weirder. Just understand that our job is to be the stone. Be the stone. Be present. Be present. And do not give your hope away. There's no such thing as false hope. Hope is as hope does. Do not give your hope away. And if you are a conservative person listening to this podcast today and and perhaps maybe this is coming through the tribal filter of the liberal who's, banging on Trump and banging on the Republicans. No. This has to do with money. I can't stress it enough. I have incredible, beautiful, huge-hearted conservatives in my own family that will say things like, well, I don't like Trump, but I love what he's doing. And I'm like, well, how can you like what he's doing if you don't like him? And how can you like what he's doing? Well, my 401k has gone up. Okay, well, so your 401k is going to go up, but the long-term repercussions of dismantling the EPA is that the air is unbreathable. So how are you going to spend your money if you can't breathe, I mean, it's crazy. And the distractions that are being thrown out right now are nuts. So work on the 5D application of your consciousness. You are a 3D individual, yet you have 5D capacity. So I want you to think about yourself as a stone that is solid as all of this chaos rushes by you, and you are pulling up from the earth the best part of the earth energy, and you are letting all the extra EMF go through the top of your stone head, don't you know? And it's opening up your crown chakra, and your gifts and talents and abilities are vast and wide, and you are connecting with the rest of the planet. And I'll tell you, if you've never done that before, at first it's kind of sad. It can be a little overwhelming. It can also be an exhilarating rush. Yet know that you are here for a reason, and that what we're experiencing, these time folds, these vacuums in government, these huge manifesting time frames of bizarre tribalism that are kind of, we're seeing that tribalism doesn't work. I mean, it's innate to us as mammals, yet it doesn't work. Our sense of tribalism is so strong that in the late 70s, there are shadow pockets in the Pentagon. And I can't even say they're shadow government because they're not. They are shadow Pentagon pockets that are funded by Black Ops dollars. And billions of dollars in the Pentagon goes to these programs. And they're the ones who have reverse engineered UFOs, and they've reverse engineered all kinds of stuff out there. And in the late 70s, it was a chaotic time on the earth. We were coming out of Vietnam, and that was after the Cuban Missile Crisis. And there was a lot of dissonance, and the American people were angry. You had Jane Fonda going over to, Vietnam and making all this fuss and stink, and the country was really torn up. And these Black Ops folks thought that a way to control people would be to stage what's called a false flag. And a false flag is when you have a fake invasion that you yourself put on. 9/11, okay? Where you participate in the horror that everyone is seeing to create a panic or a hysteria or create a reason to fulcrum something else. Like with 9/11, yes, there were crazy people in the cockpit of the plane, but miraculously the buildings dropped because the scaffolds had been cut, and there were explosions inside of the building that helped the building drop in a way that wouldn't ruin all of New York. So, there was a little help with the 9/11, and that just breaks my heart for all the thousands of people that died. But it's called a false flag, okay? So in the late 70s, the government was going to throw down a false flag using some of this reverse engineered alien technology that the earth was being invaded by aliens. Well, that was supposed to really, get people to be afraid and go inside, and the government could declare martial law and lock down and make sure that everybody was, maintainable. Except some smart human being came forward and said, we probably shouldn't do that, because if we give humanity a chance to band together against space aliens, then the whole world unites. And once the whole world has a cause in tribalism, and once we realize that we can get along, and who was once our enemy is our tremendous ally, once we recognize that, we will be absolutely non-controllable. So they did not pull the false flag, because it would have literally united the earth. This is why I believe it was President Ronald Reagan who made the crack, and he was half kidding, that it would take an alien invasion to create world peace, because everybody would then band together against the outlier or the enemy. Tribalism is something that we can use to our benefit if we just come out of victimizing others and excluding others. And the energy of tribalism, if we take it from tribalism, as in my tribe is better than your tribe, and we put it into connectivity, we can absolutely change the world in a heartbeat. And that's the period of time we're in. And that's what we're here to do. And so have some fun being the stone in the stream, ground through the earth, draw up this electromagnetic energy. If you're feeling it overwhelm you, let it open your chakras up rather than skitzing out your frontal lobe. Nobody needs that. And if you happen to be in Portland, Oregon, September 8th, or you happen to be in Boulder, Colorado, September 22nd, or you happen to be in Minneapolis on October 20th, those are the next 3 steps in my Ascension Tour. And I am so looking forward to getting out there and translating angelic messages for our times, a lot more in detail, in-depth talk about how we actually can come together as a species, what's going on, messages for specific cities. I get to take live question and answer from you there about world events and what's going on. You'll get your answers there. A few select folks are going to be chosen for live angelic readings, personal readings during the event. So if you head over to ascensiontour.com, grab your tickets. Tickets are $75 general admission. The event is 3 hours long. There's a VIP ticket available for $155, and that means that you'll go to the event and get to hang out with me and up to 40 other people afterwards for about 2.5 hours. And we're just going to shoot the breeze and talk about every weird thing you ever wanted to talk about and just hang out and have some fun. And I'm really looking forward to that. So head on to ascensiontour.com and hopefully I'll see you in one of my stops. Unfortunately, we had to remove, and this just breaks my heart because I love Philadelphia. There was a scheduling conflict with the Philadelphia stop the first part of October. So we're going to have to reschedule Philly. Philly, we will get to you, but we've got to reschedule you. So we're going to skip over from September 22nd in Boulder, Colorado, all the way over to October 20th in Minneapolis. So I hope to see you all there. And remember, if you experience a time slip, be okay with it. We cannot control space-time, okay? We can only control how we react to such phenomena. You all go have a wonderful rest of your week. Stay focused, stay blessed, and I will see you next time.